And we're back, hopefully with some Battlefield. And, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Battlefield 5 Open Beta will be available to everyone starting September 6th, but there's still time to deploy early. Don't get left behind. Pre-order Battlefield 5 and enter mankind's greatest conflict today. Yeah, it's not an open beta. It's just not an open beta. Okay, I mean, I guess I'll be back on the 6th. 2 more days. But, this is where... This is already a bad sign, because this is where EA's fucking greed is starting to show through. What is the point of making people wait 3 days to play this fucking game? There's so many questions surrounding this game. People want to see what it's about. And you're trying to get people to pre-order a $60 game. There's a deluxe edition for $72. What is $72? And then there's a standard edition for $60, um, yeah, 3 days. Okay. I mean, you don't have to give us the beta at all, so thanks, I guess. Let's talk about the fact that this game just got delayed by a month. And we're about... Let's see... about 5 or 6 weeks from the original release date. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. 6 weeks before the release date, you decide to delay the game by a month. I've seen some early chatter that the game is not playing that well, so that's troubling, because I assume this game's been in the works for a while. It's not the first Battlefield game you've made, so what the hell's going on? So now I have more questions than ever. Developers and publishers just need to get over this crap, this pre-order crap, because people are getting smarter and smarter every day. And people don't want to pre-order a game that they don't have any gameplay for. I know a lot of people are pre-ordering Red Dead, but personally I'm not touching it because they still just won't show me what the fuck that game is. Fallout 76, there's a lot of Fallout fans who've pre-ordered that game. But I still don't really know what you do in Fallout 76, so I'm not pre-ordering it. So yeah, what's the deal, right? Let's keep talking about the problems, since I can't play the game, by the way. If you're here, you're watching. I don't have access to the game because I haven't pre-ordered it. Battlefield used to be a pretty, simulation-heavy game back when it was on PC exclusively. I had a friend that played it. I used to go over to his house and play it, and I just thought it was incredible because, especially back then, PC games just had a depth to them that you didn't see on consoles. I've always been a console player, I prefer playing with a controller. I prefer the ease of console play. But there's no way you can deny that PC games just have a lot more going on, and especially back in the day. Now it's a little more even. Mm. So when I first heard that Battlefield was coming to consoles, I was pretty skeptical. I was like, oh, nah, I don't know how you would do that. There was a Battlefield before Bad Company 2 that came out on consoles. I never touched that one. I was that skeptical. And finally, about, I guess like 8 months after Battlefield Bad Company 2 released, I finally decided to play it. And I just thought it was amazing. At the time, I played a lot of Call of Duty. Black Ops had just come out, and I really loved Black Ops. But, you know, Call of Duty gets old because it's all about that tight, compact map, and everybody killing each other, and then the kill streaks just never made sense because you kill 6 people and you get rewarded with, like, a helicopter, an attack helicopter. And you're getting so many more kills, and I feel like the gap between the good and the bad players just widens. And when I finally really properly got to enjoy a Battlefield game myself, which was Bad Company 2, I just felt like the vehicles answered all the questions that the kill streaks left open in Call of Duty. God, this music is so fucking loud. How about 0? Yeah. So, and that game is great. It's not as great to go back to it now. It's got a lot of flaws, but at the time especially, and for console players, it just offered something that hadn't really been seen before. And the tactical and strategic options in that game were just something out of this world. And then Battlefield 3 was announced. That trailer may have been one of the best announcement trailers because, you know, like most game trailers, not only did it show you features in a game that were clear improvements over Bad Company, that but also the graphical quality was just amazing. And that game really was, in a lot of ways, the improvement that Bad Company needed to the formula, you know. And it's amazing that game ran so well on the PlayStation 3, 360 generation. I still go back and play Battlefield 3, and it's still a lot of fun. You know, it's still limited, and I've played it on PC and on console. I wouldn't say I prefer it on console. It's just easier to get to. But it's really not that much worse. And that's also a game that really began the conversation, at least for me, of, you know, PC Master Race and PC players are so much better and PC servers are so much better. I'll give you that there's more players on PC servers, but I still see players doing the same boneheaded anti-teammate behavior that you see on console. So it's really kind of a wash for me. Obviously, playing it with 64 players is a big difference. But it's not always for the best. It can kind of be a clusterfuck, actually. But the other problem with Battlefield 3 was that, before release, the trailer looked great, obviously. Before release, we got the beta. I think it was about a month before release. And the beta has some real issues and glitches that were pretty troubling. They were funny at the time, but looking back, they're kind of troubling because a lot of those glitches are still present to this day in the final release of Battlefield 3. Now, I don't know about PC. I went to play Battlefield 3 on PC much later after release, so I wasn't really looking for that. And it's a lot easier to patch games on PC, so it's likely that those glitches are not present at all. But as far as the console version, a lot of those still are, and I think even on PC there's still that famous glitch where if you're playing on Gulf of Oman and you're on the US team and you're in Squad A and you're the top player on Squad A, then, you know, when you get to about, I think it's like 75% down of the tickets, you just get kicked out of the game. And if you try to rejoin the server before the game ends, then all your previous points are erased. So you literally just have to sit there and let the game, wait for the game to finish just to get score. So that's a pretty bad glitch. Um, so yeah, that, you know, and that was also the game, if anybody remembers, where there was an issue with shotguns, where there was the explosive ammo. I don't actually. It wasn't all shotguns. It was just the USAS 12, which is an automatic shotgun, and if you loaded the explosive shells into it, basically, what was it? There was no damage reduction over range, so it basically just turned into uh, a grenade launcher. And you know, it was really frustrating to go into a map and try to engage somebody in some gunplay and just get killed from across the map by some guy hiding in a building, just launching fucking explosive shotgun shells at you. And I think that's when everybody got their first really bad taste in their mouth from DICE, because people were very vocal complaining about that, and DICE was just silent. And in the meantime that they were silent and not fixing this very bad glitch was also when DICE and EA revealed the premium option for Battlefield, which is essentially a season pass. You know, this is kind of a dodgy time for video games, and I can't put it all on EA. Like, pretty much every game had some kind of like season pass, or if you remember, they had that $10 like online code, so that even if you bought the game used, if you were trying to play online, you would have to pay at least $10 to buy an online code so that you could play online. Well, the reason that was so egregious at the time was because the whole point of pre-ordering Battlefield 3 was that you got the first DLC completely free. So everybody was looking forward to that DLC, and in the meantime, DICE comes out and says, oh, hey, we're offering a season pass, which is $60, which is what the game costs, and you get all the DLCs, and it's a discount. You know, it'd be cheaper than buying all the DLCs. Well, a lot of the people that were playing the game at that time had pre-ordered it and basically weren't getting any kind of discount from premium, because they had already paid. Well, I guess you could argue they hadn't paid, but it still it rankled. It wasn't a good feeling. People felt like they were lied to, you know. But in the end, it was a wash. You got all the DLC, and you got some extra perks, some cosmetic perks. Really not much in the way of perks, because like they promised like a loot drop, but this is before games really had like loot crates or loot drops. So these were actually like, if basically if you bought premium, you got to see the trailers for the DLCs early. That's not much of a perk, you know. But people weren't wise to it back then, and we kind of let it go. The general quality of the game was so good, and the game was so much fun to play that people weren't really looking at the details. But I remember that. I remember that stuff. And that's when I started being pretty suspicious, you know. After Battlefield 3, of course, there was the whole Battlefield Hardline debacle, which, I don't know, a lot of people say that Battlefield Hardline was a decent game. I didn't buy it. I just had no interest in playing that game. That was also around the time that the Medal of Honor reboot came out, and I had some hopes for that because you know, the original Medal of Honor and a couple of the sequels were pretty damn good. But that was in a different era of gaming. That was in the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 era. And so they really had to prove themselves in the PS3 era. Um, and they failed pretty spectacularly. I know that there were a few people that liked the multiplayer for Medal of Honor, but I just found it really boring. I found the campaign really stupid and boring and derivative. And that game also had like a really bad like macho vibe to it. We're like, yeah, man, fucking America, kick ass. Um, and I don't see things that way politically, so it just didn't do anything for me. And as far as the multiplayer, like, I guess like the first couple of weeks it was kind of interesting, but that game dropped off really fast. Like nobody was playing after a while. And it didn't have the feel of a Battlefield game. It was like a slightly more complex Call of Duty, but I mean, you got to give Call of Duty its props. There's not really many games that do Call of Duty better. Titanfall 2 was a pretty good Call of Duty clone. Probably the first game I've played that I felt like did, that style of gameplay better. But, Call of Duty's been doing their thing for a while, and say what you will about them. Those games are pretty polished. And if you're looking for a small arena, like team deathmatch style gameplay, it's kind of hard to top Call of Duty. And Medal of Honor certainly didn't do it. So that didn't leave a great taste in my mouth. And so by the time Battlefield Hardline came out, I had no fucking time of day for that game. So I didn't even touch it. And I guess some people still play it to this day. Good for them. I will never have any interest in that game. Then Battlefield 4 was announced, and I started looking forward to Battlefield again. And of course, it came out and it was a fucking disaster. A complete fucking disaster. Even on PC at first, although that was fixed a lot faster. But, people give Battlefield 4 a lot of praise now, and it is, if you want to jump into that game, even to this day, it's a great game. But back in the day, when it was coming out, you have to remember, EA was trying to get away with releasing a really shitty game that didn't work, and especially on consoles, and especially on PS4, which is where I was trying to play it. That game did not work properly at all, and it was fucking $60. Thank God, at least at that point, I hadn't even bought it in a premium yet. But I'm sure a lot of people did. I'm sure a lot of people paid $120 for that game right off the bat, and they were playing something that didn't fucking work. And that's really shitty. And it wasn't until um, basically until there was just blood cry, public outcry, and almost blood on the streets that EA was like, okay, I guess we'll fix the game. Sorry. And sure, their stocks took a hit, and they had to delay the DLC, and they had to implement the what is it, the consumer testing environment, the CTE, and then the game started to finally come together. Um, and yes, I will give them props for doing what needed to be done to fix the game, but they're the ones that released the broken game, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure where all this praise comes from. Like, oh, they did the right thing. Like, yeah, eventually. Not at first. And not until people were, basically gonna fucking boycott DICE and EA completely. So, and to be fair, to this day, also, Battlefield 4 has a lot of glitches and flaws that really shouldn't be present in that game. But whatever. It's playable. They got back into people's good graces. And then, of course, the whole Battlefield, Battlefront thing happened. Because that's when LucasArts was sold, and E3 happened, and DICE slapped together that very weak and vague Battlefront teaser. And a lot of people were excited. Personally, I still had a lot of reservations, but I was trying to be optimistic, and I was trying to hope that what we were going to get was basically a Battlefield and Star Wars game. Because that's essentially what the first Battlefront games were. I mean, back in the PlayStation 2, sure, with limited technology, but I feel like that's what those games were kind of aiming for. And then the game released, and I don't know. I don't know what the hell went wrong with Battlefront and Battlefront 2. I feel like DICE just forgot how to make a game. They certainly didn't make anything close to a Battlefield game. Now, I can understand, if you're releasing a Star Wars game, you want it to have wider appeal. You don't want people to... Because, Battlefield is a tough game, and it's a game that you jump into, and if you don't know what you're doing, you're getting shot by snipers from miles away, people that you can't engage, or you're getting killed by helicopters and tanks. It can be intimidating. It can be not fun. But that also gets to a major flaw in the Battlefield games, which is that DICE has never implemented like a tutorial to acclimate players with the mechanics of the game. I basically learned to play Battlefield from voice chat and YouTube videos. People on YouTube pointing out mechanics of the game that aren't obvious, like spotting, some of the ammo, ammo drops, health drops, that really form the backbone of the game. And I've never understood why Battlefield doesn't make a concerted effort to teach players about those mechanics. Now, they're not the only ones. Overwatch is a game that I played that I had a lot of hope for and enthusiasm for, and I am just shocked at how much of that game is not explained to people. And it shows through in the gameplay, because if you play a game of Overwatch with randoms, like, nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. Nobody understands the game modes. Really understands the different abilities on the characters and how can they can be used. Um, and it's just frustrating because you feel like you're losing matches that you shouldn't be losing, you know. And Battlefield is like that. So, I can understand why Battlefront needed to be the way it was from a perspective of trying to appeal to the most players possible because, it's Star Wars. You want to sell that to as many players as possible. And I know a lot of people that bought Star Wars Battlefront who had never touched a Battlefield game. And actually, a lot of my friends who refuse to play Battlefield because they find it too complicated, they bought Star Wars and they're like, yeah, Star Wars. I love Star Wars. And then after a couple of weeks, they're like, what's wrong with this game? How come I'm not enjoying it? And I'd come over and talk to them about like the differences between Battlefront and Battlefield. And actually talking to them like that got a few of them to get into Battlefield 4 and then later Battlefield 1, unfortunately. And but yeah, Battlefront, there's just something wrong with that game. It's not very fun to play. It's not very strategic or tactical. I guess it's a success as a like jump in, play a few rounds, jump out game, but I just don't think it has a whole lot of lasting appeal. Certainly not for Battlefield players. And the problem, of course, is that Battlefield 1 it feels like a Battlefront game. You know, I mean, it's just all about. There's like no weapon customization. There's no like long term appeal for that game as far as like, in a Battlefield game, you're unlocking stuff like months into the game because you don't use every weapon right off the bat. You don't use every vehicle. Some vehicles are hard to get into because everybody wants to jump in the helicopter or everybody wants to play in the tank. So it forces you to adapt and use some things that you wouldn't normally use. And even after you've unlocked everything for one game, or sorry, for one weapon, you eventually come across a weapon you don't use very much, and you're like, all right, let's see what this one's all about. And at first it's really hard to use it. You're getting used to a different rate of fire, a different caliber of bullet. But you adjust and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I can use this submachine gun more like a shotgun, or it's more like an assault rifle, or this assault rifle is better at longer range, or better at short range, or now that I have the scope, this weapon's really coming together. And that's kind of to me that's always been the fun part of Battlefield, the RPG feel of it. And Battlefield 1 just was lacking all of that, which is unfortunate because the game feel was really good. Like I feel like the motion was really good. I feel like the aim was really good. The the vehicles to some extent felt really good. But I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit by trying to make the vehicles too um, not realistic, but accurate to the era. They feel clunky like World War One vehicles, and I think ultimately that was kind of a detriment. And again, it wouldn't have been that bad if the vehicles had like progression where you're unlocking different items, armor, weapons, etc., for use in the vehicles, but there's none of that. And even so, it would have been okay if the infantry side of it was functioning the way it used to in the older games. But that wasn't there either. So, yeah, I don't know what to say. I really hated Battlefield 1, to be honest. I didn't play it for very long, and I certainly didn't buy any of the DLC, and even after the game was patched, I just had no interest in it anymore. So now we come to Battlefield 5, and there's a lot of things going for this game. Obviously, it's a step up as far as era because we're in World War II instead of World War One. So there's more options as far as equipment, weapons, vehicles. Um, I think it's going to feel more familiar to a modern player as opposed to World War One, which has a lot of limitations. And again, I'm not really meaning to imply that it was the World War One setting that ruined Battlefield One. I think that game had a lot of issues, but I think the setting didn't help. And even though the game looks great and it's probably one of the better campaigns. I still don't think it's very good. But yeah, I think it did hamper that game to an extent. And I think that World War II has more potential to bring in more players. Obviously, more people are familiar with the era. Um, so yeah, this game could be a return to form for Battlefield. Despite I think the trailers so far haven't been very good. But if you kind of know how to watch a gameplay trailer, or there, okay, let me walk this back because the first two trailers haven't really been gameplay trailers. But there are things that hint at the gameplay, and I think that if you know how to watch a video game trailer and look for those clues, those technical clues that are dropped into video game trailers, I think it's starting to feel more like an old Battlefield game. So there's hope. I'm trying to be optimistic. But on the other side, there is that tone deafness of the marketing campaign, which is like, why have you not figured out what people like about Battlefield? And why are you advertising the game as like this like crazy like run up the stairs, jump out the window, be a redheaded woman with no helmet and a prosthetic arm in the battlefield? Now, a lot of people have made a big deal about that, and it doesn't really bother me because ultimately all that stuff could be looked at as, well, it's just cosmetic. If you don't want to wear a helmet in Battlefield, you don't have to. You can just, let your hair fly. The problem for me of putting that so up front in the gameplay trailer is that Battlefield has always been a series that people refer to as realistic. Well, it's not realistic, but it is more authentic. And that's why people, I think, respond well to it, is because it has that authentic feel of a battle. And part of that is that, unlike Call of Duty, you're not running around with a bandana. You're supposed to be a soldier, and soldiers wear helmets to war. And so part of the problem of having that female character so up front and center of that trailer was that it didn't feel like Battlefield, That would have been better if that trailer was focusing on the campaign, which, from what I understand, is going to have some sort of option where you can, like, lead like a ragtag non-regular army like guerrilla squad through the war. So that's fine, because you're not soldiers, you don't belong to the army, you're just fighting. So that makes sense. But in a trailer where you're ostensibly showing off multiplayer gameplay, which I guess, that trailer's just confusing because it goes from those early, like, high octane scenes to, like, which are all obviously CG, and then they try to put you in, like, the perspective of a player, but then the player doesn't really do anything. Like, they shoot a grenade into a plane, they fire off a couple rounds into, like, the distance, but nothing really happens. It's just a really bad trailer. So I think that's why people reacted so negatively to it, and why they focus on that female character so much was because she was up front and center. But I don't really think she's the problem with the game. The the problem with the game is that there's questions about dice and how they're going to balance the game. Is it going to be more like a Battlefield 1 slash Battlefront, like, friendly to everyone kind of experience, or is it going to be a more balanced experience that caters to the hardcore players that have been with the series for decades now, and want to jump into a game that has complexity and strategy and tactics. And I think that's what people really are worried about. And at this point, I gotta say, it doesn't really look good that the game's been delayed 6 weeks before release for another month. It's like, how much time is a month really buying you? Is it really just that you're trying to get out of that busy window that you were going to release in? Um, or is there a problem with the game? Is the game not finished? Is this now a Battlefield 4 situation where the game's going to release and it's essentially broken? I'm really pretty worried about that because that was not fun. And it took me years to go back to Battlefield 4 and really treat it as, the game that I play every day, basically. So, at this point, there's already been an alpha for this game. This is it says open beta in the corner, but it's not an open beta because I'm not able to play it because I haven't pre-ordered the game. Well, sorry, Electronic Arts. Sorry, DICE. I'm not going to give you fucking $60 for a game until I know that I like it. So, I'll be back on the 6th to play the beta. But if it's not good, I'm not going to play this game. At least not very far down the line. And it doesn't look good that you're still trying to get money out of me, but you won't let me fucking play the game. It just doesn't look good. So, I guess that's it for now. And we'll see in a couple days whether this game is worth a shit or not. Anyway, goodbye for now.